Well, hi, boys and girls. It's time to read a story with Nana. It's time to read a story with me. I'm really glad to see you. I'm happy to be here. So let's read a story with me. I'm so glad you came back. I have so many stories to read to you. Today, the one I've decided is called Little Gulliver. It's a bit exciting. There's a lot of adventure, and it's about a little boy named Davy who lives with his uncle, Dan, on an island where there's a lighthouse. And if you look at the picture right here, really close, you can see Davy and the lighthouse. If you don't know what a lighthouse is, it's a very important structure. What it does, it has a candle in the very top, and that candle gets lit every night before dark and sends out a signal to all the ships that are passing by to be safe, be careful, don't run aground, and don't come any closer. So Uncle Dan and Davy perform a very important job every night that helps the ships pass in the harbor safely. One day, Uncle Dan decided he was going to go to the mainland and he was going to buy supplies. Well, the supplies could be food, it could be biscuits for a dog named Nep that was a very good friend of Davy's, and it could be clothing. In any case, he told Davy, I'm off to go to the mainland now, so you behave, take good care of yourself, and have a good day. Uncle Dan set out, and Davy and Nep, the dog, a big cuddly Newfoundland, who was at Davy's side from morning until night. He even slept at Davy's feet. But Davy had another friend. And the other friend was called Gulliver. And he called him Gulliver because he would fly out in far places and come back and tell Davy all of his adventures and all the things he saw. So Nep, Gulliver, Davy, Uncle Dan, and the lighthouse are the main characters in this story I wanted to tell you today. As Uncle Dan left, he told Davy, I'll be back before dark. And Davy said, okay, and set about having the adventures he was going to have. And what he had was, with Nep and Gulliver, they would go down to the water and see the whales passing by, or the sea lions, or the seals, or the crabs, or the sea anemones. Can you imagine getting up during the day and watching whales play with you? Oh my goodness. So Davy did all that, and as the day grew on, and it got a little later and later, Uncle Dan didn't come back. Davy grew concerned, but he knew he had a very big responsibility, and that was, in Uncle Dan's absence, he had to light the candle in the lighthouse to warn the ships to be safe. Suddenly, it got really dark, and Davy knew he had to do that very important job. He fell asleep and didn't wake until morning and expected to find Uncle Dan, but Uncle Dan wasn't back. For sure, he was worried, and he told it to Gulliver, and Gulliver said, no problem, I'll fly over to the mainland, and I'll look for Dan, and I'll be back, and I'll tell you that everything is okay. Once again, a storm came up and blew poor Gulliver into the sail of a passing ship and plopped him down right on the deck. He was cold, he was wet, and if it weren't for a little girl on board the ship by the name of Dora, he certainly would have had a very, very tough time. and, and there she is. She rescued him. She brought him inside the ship, and she kept him nice and warm and dry until the following morning when the ship landed at the mainland, and she scooped him up and decided that she was going to keep him as a pet. Unfortunately, that isn't what Gulliver wanted. He wanted to be able to get to the mainland, find that Uncle Dan was well and safe, and fly back to the lighthouse and tell Davy that everything was okay. But as you can see, she put Gulliver in a cage that he couldn't get out of. And dogs would come and bark at him every day, and cats would come by and hiss at him, and even roosters would climb on top of the cage and peck at him. He was just miserable. He needed to get away really quickly to be sure that Uncle Dan was safe and talk to Davy. Well, for another day, he was stuck in that cage. That night, though, he happened to see a little shadow coming across the lawn and came right up to him at the cage. And this little person started to unravel the knots that were holding the cage tight. And she brought food, and she would feed it to Gulliver to help him to feel strong and get well. Lo and behold, Gulliver was able to get out of the cage, and he flew directly to this little person that turned out to be a girl named Moppet. And she was very, very sad, and Gulliver thanked her profusely for saving him and setting him free. And he noticed she was sad, and he said, "You know, it's the first time I'm seeing you here. You don't come out and play with the other children." And she said, "No, I don't. They don't want to play with me because I'm black." And he said, "Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Why in heaven's name would they do that? Because you're black? That's not a good thing. You're a very kind little girl. You helped to save me. You're feeding me. And everybody should see that about you. Thank you so much." At that point, they were chatting back and forth when they thought they heard a voice say, "Davy, Davy." Well, again, Oliver was shocked. He thought, could that possibly be Uncle Dan? So he flew up, because now he was strong enough to be able to do that, and he looked around the rocks, and he looked around the yard, and lo and behold, there was Uncle Dan on the rocks, and his head was bleeding. Well, Gulliver flew quickly back to Moppet and told her, and she quickly went into the house to get other people to come and tend to Dan. While they were waiting for them to come, she ripped her apron, and she made a bandage for his head that was bleeding. And she also gave him more of the food she bought for Oliver. Lo and behold, the adults from the house came down and carried Uncle Dan up to the house and put him in a proper bed and gave him proper food, and a doctor was there to help heal the wound that was on his head. What had happened was, as he was sailing to the mainland, a storm came up and threw him and his boat against the rocks, and that's where he's been all that while. So, as he got stronger and he realized Moppet had helped him so much, he also realized he was weak and could use some help at the lighthouse. Well, that's all Moppet had to hear, and she was glad to go along if he wanted her to. And he said, "Yes, I would be very grateful for your help in helping me at the lighthouse and helping me to feel strong." And she said, "I'll just ask my uncle and be sure that it's okay." So she went into the house and spoke to her uncle, And they both came back and told Uncle Dan absolutely, because she was only a couple of miles away from the house, and he could come and visit her anytime, and she would be doing a very good thing for Dan and Davy. She would take care of them and cook them proper meals. And then, lo and behold, off they went when Uncle Dan was feeling better and sailed away in a boat back to the island. That's about the end of the story, but it isn't the end of the lessons to be taught. The story is about courage. The story is about responsibility and making sure that you do what you're expected to do. And most of all, it's a story about kindness. And no matter who you are, and no matter what the color of your skin, if you're kind and caring and help people, look what Davy did. He helped the sailors to be sure they were safe. And look what Moppet did. But Dora did too. She didn't know that Gulliver needed to find Uncle Dan, but she saved Gulliver. And then Moppet did most of all by letting Gulliver out of the cage and helping Uncle Dan to feel well and get him safely back to the island. So, be kind, be helpful, take care of each other, no matter who they are, no matter what the color of their skin. Good lessons, I think. That's about it for today. I really do hope you'll come back. I have so many stories to read to you. Bye for now.